Congressman Dean Phillips, who is in a primary challenge against Joe Biden, trying to be the Democratic nominee for the presidency in 2024, is now apologizing to Bernie Sanders for not taking his claims about the Democratic primary process seriously back in 2016, particularly about the rigging of the Democratic primary elections. He tweeted, "I have to make an apology to Bernie Sanders. I had long dismissed his complaints about the rigged Democratic Party primary system, but you know what? He was right, and I apologize, Bernie. Voter suppression in New Hampshire, candidate suppression, ballot access, and debate suppression, none. I think meaning that there will not be debates, not that there's no suppression. If you're among the majority of Democrats who want change, please visit dean24.com and help us create the change." Why is his website with his first name? That makes it seem as if it's Howard Dean that's running. Anyway, small thing. So he is arguing that because they're not having the debates, that's an attempt to protect Joe Biden, and he is right. And he and other challengers are also having a difficult time getting access to their state ballots. It's one of the topics that I'm going to be speaking about with candidate Cenk Uygur on Monday on my show. So what does Bernie think about this very belated apology? Well, asked if he agrees. This was from this was back from 2016, the election, by Philip Rucker, saying, asked if he agrees with O'Malley calling DNC process rigged. Bernie Sanders says, "I do." So that's a reference to how this got in the news in the first place. But Bernie said he's changed his views now that he's a candidate. "I'm not getting involved in this." So, yeah, from the point of view of Bernie, I mean, set aside for a second the fact that he's supporting Joe Biden for the presidency. Why is he going to accept an apology from a guy 2 elections after it has any chance of affecting Bernie Sanders' political fortune? Rayvana, what do you think?
Bernie Sanders said no fake friends. He said no fake friends, and he brushed him off. I will say the Howard Dean comment you made did bring me back to a simpler time in American politics where we could just take a moment to enjoy the Howard Dean scream. And instead now we are all in fact doing the Howard Dean scream.
Maybe Howard Dean, with his organized all 50 states and also screaming, was trying to tell us what the future was going to be for us.
Mm-hmm.
I am a person whose political career, in part, a great deal, 33% of my life, my adult life, was at Democracy for America, which was the Dean for America's campaign. So I absolutely think the reason he's using his first name is that reason. Because why wouldn't you, right? Because why wouldn't you? Also, listen. I'm with Bernie Sanders on this. I have no time for fake friends, especially Democrats who pretend and will slaughter you when you're criticizing something that's benefiting them, and now speak out when it's adversary towards them. I'm not thrilled with this. I think it's tacky. You sound like woe is me when the whole system has been rigged for a long time to exclude progressives, which could have done a lot of good for not just our party, the country in general could have benefited so much from what could have happened if we had open primaries. So I'm glad he's feeling what Bernie felt a while ago.
Yeah, just way too late. It is very easy to change your position when something happens directly to you. But I don't know, I think wisdom is being able to do it when you see it happening to other people, including people you don't necessarily agree with. Anyway, I agree with him on the debates, and I do think that there's some weird stuff going on with ballot access. Let me also just throw out one last comment, and I know this probably everyone's gonna disagree with me. I've never liked the term rigged. Not that there isn't truth to it. I think, as I'm saying right now, I do think that there are tons of things that are done that shouldn't be done that manipulate the outcome of elections. But for me, rigged always feels too simplistic, because every election is going to have these influences and they're not always going to look the same. Whereas rigged is just, I think it leads to apathy. It makes it seem as if it's impossible to win, rather than that these things are being manipulated in a variety of ways that perhaps can be countered. So anyway, I know that I have the outside position on that, but I've always felt weird about that term. I think it's thrown about too loosely. Now, obviously in 2016, there was a lot of shenanigans going on. I think in this election, very much. But I think 2020, I think had significantly less of that. It had, contested debates, lots of them. There was certainly a window for someone like Bernie Sanders. It seemed for a while that he was gonna win. He won the early races. So anyway, a lot more needs to be done to reform these primaries. Hopefully going forward, Dean Phillips will be an ally on that. As of right now though, and I'll give you guys a chance to weigh in one more time, New poll shows Phillips receiving 6% support among Democrats and those leaning Democrat. Marianne Williamson is at 8% and Joe Biden's at 77%. So it is still, it is very weighted towards Joe Biden, perhaps more even than it was at an earlier phase in this thing. But anything else you guys want to say about the Democratic primary?
There was some Democrats who acted very bravely in 2016 when they stood on the right side of history and defended Bernie Sanders from the DNC corruption that resulted, ultimately, I'm sorry, it resulted in Donald Trump being the president of the United States, for a myriad of reasons. And they had a lot to lose. And a lot of Democrats did lose, jobs, favor with the party because they were brave. And here we have Dean Phillips stealing valor from Howard Dean. And because he feels like he's on the receiving end of the same type of corruption and has everything to gain for calling it out, is now calling it out. And I mean, I joked earlier that Bernie said no fake friends, but that is exactly what it is. He only cares because it's personally affecting him. And I will just end by saying, God, what I wouldn't give to be back on that day that Bernie Sanders won the Las Vegas primary. Haven't felt that good ever since.
That was a good feeling.
Yeah, I think it's always good to step up and step back. And because I stepped back, Ray said what I was going to say in a better way. So
then I'll end this by saying, as we've all now acknowledged, because I have my daughter now, I'm soft. So it's possible that like Phillips 2024 was taken. I don't know. And maybe this apology to Bernie Sanders is the prelude to working hard to open up this process. I don't know. Dean Phillips is not a candidate that I have followed closely. Don't know the positions, but I'm interested to see. But anyway, for right now, no fake friends.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.